Hi, Kyle.
Hey Jess, how's it going?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Super excited about this. It's
I know.
what I like to think about it. This is like when the trip finally gets out of the group chat. I mean, this is literally finally getting out of the group chat.
We are getting on the plane. We're at the airport and we're getting ready to board. Got our boarding passes in hand. I just dated myself there. Um,
No, I still get a boarding pass sometimes. If
well,
you check in at the little cubicle because
that's true. Yeah, that is true.
so
That's true. Well, welcome all of our listeners to the very first episode of Early Adopter. I'm Jess and I am here with Kyle, and we are so excited to launch Early Adopter. It's something that we've been talking about and we've been working on for probably years at this point, definitely months and months and months. So we're really excited to be launching this podcast, which is all about making AI practical and accessible for small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and the mission is really simple, right? So we want to turn AI from a confusing buzzword, break through a lot of the jargon and the hype that's talked about. In fact, I mean, we can talk about hype all day long. Jess and I constantly are sharing little pieces like agentic AI is all hype and stuff like that. So we want to break through that and really have this be about how do you turn AI into a practical early advantage and how do you use it best? So whether you're a founder, a freelancer, or even just tech curious. In fact, I'll do a little shout out to Hey Mom, because the truth is, I told my mom about this and she's like, oh, that would be so great, right? So this can really be for just about anyone.
Hi, Kyle's mom.
Yeah. Love getting a little call out. But this is really about cutting through the jargon, understanding the tools that can save you time and really help you grow your business. Or if you're just curious about all of this, it might help you get a little bit more done with less effort. I think we're all about like more with less.
Love that. And I think, this is moving, or AI is moving so fast. In fact, Kyle and I were talking about this yesterday where, a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, tutorials don't even exist for it yet. A lot of the time you can jump on YouTube and be like, hey, I want to look up how to do XYZ. But in this particular case, those tutorials are not around because we're so new to a lot of this stuff. This is all moving incredibly fast. I'm sure stuff that we're going to say now is going to be different in 2 months' time, but that's kind of the whole point of this podcast is we really want to keep our listeners up to date on all of this stuff and try and demystify some of it because it's a lot. It's super overwhelming, even when you have a vague knowledge of what's going on. So we want to help with that.
And sometimes a lot of this can be really technical, right? So we're going to go through some stuff that, we've gone down a lot of rabbit holes ourselves. And sometimes we get into things and it just becomes really technical. Jess can talk about her kind of coding journey with Python, getting, more and more advanced with that. But some of the stuff that we'll talk about, requires a little bit of coding. So, we're going to try to break that down, maybe do some things that don't require coding so you can actually get it working. And we'll kind of help you guide you through some of those bits. But it definitely, you can go down some rabbit holes and I'm definitely
real rabbit holes.
Yeah. But so for our audience, I've got my coffee, my cold brew. Jess, you're coming at this from London, so we've got a lot of time zones that we're covering here.
We sure do. I am not going to be having any coffee on this podcast, so I will leave that to you. I've already had mine for the day. So before we dive in, why don't we introduce ourselves and talk about why we're actually interested in this, how we met, all of that good stuff.
Thanks. It's a good question. Why are we the ones to be talking about this? Jess kind of hit on that. We just felt like there was some white space. I've been kind of on this journey for the last 10 years. So it started back when I started learning to code, doing machine learning, very naively trying to predict box office with machine learning. But it kind of continued to kind of grow. And I just, learning and doing more. Jess and I met at Real D way back in the day. We'd age ourselves if we said how long ago now. But
for those of you who are not aware, Real D was a 3D technology company. If you've ever watched a movie in 3D, you will have been watching it almost guaranteed on a Real D system. And so that's how Kyle and I met, as you say, quite a long time ago now.
And then started a business around, media campaign attribution for studios. And everywhere from then social media analytics and, using machine learning to optimize your campaigns. And then I've also continued kind of going along until I think the big kind of moment in the end of 2022 when, or 2021, was it? When ChatGPT launched. And
I think it
when
was too.
AI kind of had its moment. And from then on, it's been just really a sprint around, building proof of concepts, everything from talent acquisition to content generation within specific niches. And then, there's some stuff that Jess and I are working on that we can't even talk about it yet. So it's really been quite a journey. And I think the important bit here for me is it's been a constant learning and experimentation. And I kind of want to bring that kind of experimentation and learning concept to this group. We don't have all the answers. We're going to try to bring on some smart people to talk about their specific use cases and what they're doing. We're going to basically learn alongside you and do what we can. I come at this from a slightly technical perspective, but both Jess and I have worked with this stuff in business. We're working on it at the moment, developing startups, ideas, little side projects, and we just want to share that with you guys.
Totally. So my background, I've been interested in innovative products for probably as long as I've been working. I launched the first ever Sony e-reader in the UK, which was something that existed a really long time ago. I'm not going to say how long ago because I will date myself, but it was the predecessor to the Kindle. I'll just say it that way. And then I've worked on kind of innovation projects ever since, kind of culminating in the company that Kyle and I worked on together. And in that particular project, I should say we received a grant from Innovate UK to help build that project. It was all around simplifying social media or paid social media for small businesses. So this is actually an area that both Kyle and I kind of have a long-standing interest in, simplifying these complicated processes and complicated complicated subjects, I should say, for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And in the last kind of 4 or 5 years, I've been working in the digital transformation space. So I've been working with big multinational corporations on a variety of really complicated data projects and, marketing technology projects and that sort of thing. So it gives an interesting perspective of like what big companies are doing, but also kind of from a personal level, I'm interested in what smaller companies are doing as well. And I think from our days of working on the startup together, I remember spending hours, because I think this is something that Kyle and I talk about a lot. When you're running a small business or you're an entrepreneur, you wear all the hats. You have to do absolutely everything. And I just remember sitting there trying to learn designing things. I'm not a designer. I'm the least artistic person on the face of the earth, but I was handling all of our marketing. So I had to be the designer. We didn't have the money to pay someone else to do it. And I just remember sitting there for hours learning how to use Canva in its early days and that sort of stuff. So I think that's where something like AI
wasn't like known yet.
No, this was just when Canva had first launched. And so I think this is where AI is going to be invaluable, is to be able to help small business owners, entrepreneurs, anyone who's tech curious, et cetera, to be able to do some of these things and take some of those tasks off your plate so you don't have to spend all your time designing things. You can have the support from AI with human guardrails. We should always put that in. But that's, I think, where AI is incredibly powerful, especially on the smaller end of things, but for any size business. But we both appreciate the fact that there is a lot of information out there and there's a lot of stuff to cover. And I should also flag that I'm coming at it from a less technical perspective. As Kyle mentioned earlier, I am on my own coding journey just because I'm always wanted to learn, but I am by no means technical. So a lot of the stuff that I'm figuring out is from a much more non-technical perspective. And then I run things by Kyle. But it also kind of goes to show that anyone can learn how to use this stuff, right? I'm not, super technical or learning. I'm figuring these things out as well from a more layperson's perspective, shall we say.
I think classic adage, jack of all trades, master of none. We're kind of entering into the world where that's actually going to be a bit of a superpower, because it's more about, for me, what's the business context? What's the user experience? Because the ability to build things now is, or like the challenge in building is almost minimal, right? So we'll get into all of this, all the different tools, but you can build proof of concepts in a day or less, 10 minutes with the right prompt and the right markdowns. So it's really about how do you solve a problem and really understanding that. So again, I'll kind of reiterate what Jess is saying, which is our goal isn't really to turn you into an AI expert or to be an expert coder or anything like that. It's really to show you how to leverage these tools in a simple, kind of digestible way that can deliver immediate results. So it's all about practical application. That's your business owner. If you're an audience member here where you're just trying to figure out how to optimize your current workflows, I always tell people AI isn't going to replace your job, but someone using AI effectively might. For a business owner, AI isn't going to kill your business, but the business that comes along that's AI first and really utilizing AI in a strong, intelligent way might actually end up eating your lunch. So this is all about how do you use AI for what you're doing and simplifying a lot of your workflows.
Exactly. I think the lens that we are going to be looking at all of this through is how can it help my business? How can it take things off my plate so I can focus on the thing that I actually want to be doing? Because that's why everyone starts a business, right? You don't start it so you can get bogged down in doing, admin or social media content or whatever it is. You start it because you have a specific thing that you want to do. And unfortunately, in this day and age, all the things like social media, content creation, and admin are a necessary part of that. And this, I think, again, is where AI is incredibly beneficial because it can take some of that stuff off your plate so you can focus on the reason that you started the business, but also the thing that makes you money. Because at the end of the day, you start a business, not out of the goodness of your heart, but because you want to make money doing it. And admin and social media content creation, all that stuff takes that time away that you could be focusing on the thing that at the end of the day is going to make your business successful. There's a audiobook I was listening to earlier today that's all about taking back your time. And that's exactly what this is. AI is here to help you take back your time so that you can focus on the reason you start a business.
So wait, Jess, are you saying that I don't want to be spending all day working on deck slides? Is that?
I mean, I know it's everyone's favorite thing to do. I mean, for me personally, it's writing LinkedIn posts. If I don't have to write a LinkedIn post, I will be over the moon. So
LinkedIn copywriter is not what your CV is designed
a
to
LinkedIn copywriter, if that is what my life becomes, I will cry because it's my least favorite thing in the world to do. And yet I somehow find myself having to do it all the time.
Actually,
all the time.
This is great. So at some point, we're going to talk about community questions and polls, right? We want to hear.
Yes, that's a great segue, actually, right into our community.
I want to hear from the group at some point, and we'll work on this. But I want to hear from the group. What is the thing that you don't want to do? What is the thing, or you don't want to become? Jess doesn't want to be a LinkedIn copywriter. I don't want to be a slide monkey. Let's basically put that out to the audience and figure out what are the things.
I love it. We're gonna post that to the community this week, and we're gonna get some feedback as to what is your least favorite job task that you hate with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. Because we all have that one thing that we all hate doing. So. How can AI help you with that one most hated task? But that is actually ahead.
Quick segue, which is I read somewhere, this is I think the best way to put this, which was AI was supposed to free me up so I could do art. It wasn't AI was supposed to do art so I could do all my menial tasks. Right?
That is 1,000% spot on, 100%. And actually, I think that's an important thing to flag. We are very conscious of the creative industries, both of us. Come from a background in film and the creative industries. We would never want AI to be taking over someone's creative job because humans are 1,000 times more creative than AI. But to supplement, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Take away with our segue.
Okay, so here we go. We got sidetracked a little bit. So last week or a couple of weeks ago when we launched our LinkedIn community, we ran a little poll just to see what people were actually interested in learning about. Mm-hmm. And our community has spoken. The key things that people were interested in.
I was really surprised by this, honestly. I think when
we were
crafting a lot of the narrative, we expected the jargon, the hype to be like a big component, that people would really want to cut through that and understand what was happening. And I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, 0% of people responded cutting through the hype.
And that is correct.
And in fact, what the results were pretty clear on is that you wanted practical recommendations on which tools to use and when. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
No, I was just going to read through the results, but go for it.
Yeah, and I think this is mirrored in a lot of what I hear going to events and conferences, which are everyone's trying to use AI, but there's a million different tools out there. I mean, it's in some ways overwhelming. And I feel like, Jess, you and I are constantly sending this new tool, that new tool does this.
There's so many tools.
so many tools. So I think a large focus or a central focus of Early Adoptr is going to be to kind of cut through which tools to use, when, give you options between, okay, this tool costs $20 a month and this tool is free. Because as Jess and I can speak to, like, that $20 a month starts to add up when you've got five,
Real
six,
quick.
and lots of different tools, right?
Real quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so just so the listeners are aware, we had a couple of other options as well. So cutting through the jargon got 0% of votes. Although I will say anecdotally, I do have one or two friends who are very keen on learning how to cut through the jargon. So that is something I think that we will be focusing on. Because also there is so much jargon. There are so many acronyms. There's so many words that mean things from a technical perspective, but aren't necessarily understandable for the layperson. And I will say some of that is by design. I always use the phrase gatekeeping by jargon. I heard that somewhere, and I just thought it was such a useful phrase because it's absolutely true. It's a way of keeping people out and keeping knowledge specialized. And we are absolutely not about that. So we will absolutely be focusing on the jargon despite the fact that it didn't get any votes. We also want to focus on real world use cases. So this is actual cases that we have seen that we think are a really cool application, and that can be from any size business. But I just think that sometimes people need inspiration. And so real world use cases are a great opportunity to say, hey, look at so-and-so. They're doing a really cool thing here. This is something that you can replicate in your business. As Kyle talked about, knowing which tools to use and when. Where do I even start is one of our poll options. And that's a great question because, as we've said, there are a lot of tools. There's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of just everything. So again, I think going back to basics is absolutely something that we're going to be focusing on as well. And then our final poll option is optimize my productivity, which is a really big one, I think, for a lot of people. I was just talking about this with a friend the other day who is feeling overwhelmed with all of the admin stuff that she has to do. And so we were talking through a couple of ways that we can help take some of that off her plate. It all just boils down to how can we make your lives a little bit easier? And that is where AI is super helpful.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that would be useful for the audience is, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I think one of the takeaways from our polls is we recommend starting like a simple AI opportunity list for your business or for your specific, workflows, what you're doing. So if you take 10 minutes this week, write down 3 to 5 repetitive tasks that consume your time. These are going to be the best candidates for implementing AI to try and automate or speed up or optimize. And again, you'll probably prioritize those based on the ones you don't like doing.
That's okay. That's great. Let's focus on those.
Version of something that you don't like to do. Focus on that. And then, we'll kind of give you some ability to later on in the show to tell us, what that thing is. And at some point we'll cover it.
Absolutely. And I think, again, just coming back to the purpose of this pod, which is giving really actionable advice as well, because there's nothing that annoys me more than a podcast that just talks about someone's background or whatever. That's all great. But I actually want to listen. If I'm taking the time to listen to something, I want to learn something. That is hopefully an angle that will be really useful for our users. So we're going to kind of come to everything with that lens. And we'll put this in the show notes as well. We will put our advice, our actionable takeaways in the business jargon world. We'll drop them in the show notes as well. So we've been talking a lot about why we are doing this and what our focus is going to be. One of the things that we want to cover is AI news of the week. I think this is something that a lot of AI podcasts and AI newsletters and things are covering, but I think we would like to come at it from a slightly different angle, which is we'll cover a big news story every week and then why that actually matters for you as a business person. Because at the end of the day, there's so much news coming out. It changes every day. Literally every day, there's a major AI news story, and that's all great. But sometimes it becomes noise and you don't actually get to think about what it means in the wider picture or the bigger picture of what you are working on. This week, we've got 2 pretty big stories that actually kind of relate to each other. The first one is all around OpenAI, and they have announced an integration with Shopify that enables users to discover and purchase products directly within ChatGPT conversations. Alongside this story, Perplexity, which is a great AI tool if you haven't come across Perplexity, which a lot of people haven't yet.
You're a big fan of Perplexity, and we'll get into this.
Huge fan of Perplexity, but Perplexity has just announced a partnership with PayPal, which will also enable in-chat purchases with PayPal or Venmo if you are American. And so both of these things are really just going to be game changing for the e-commerce space.
Yeah, I think it's, the beginning of the term conversational commerce. I love that term. Right? It's a little jargony, but if you break it down, it's where shopping happens directly within the chat interface rather than on a traditional website, going to a URL, looking through the catalog. Now all of a sudden you just say, show me X, Y, and Z product. And then, the scary thing is it shows you the product and then you just click buy right in there. So, I think about this from a consumer angle, and we'll talk about some of the benefits professionally and, from the consumer. But man, we're going to have to start having a much better discipline. That impulse buy, oh, I'm just looking at this thing. I don't really have a specific use cases and I'm just doing some research. All of a sudden becomes really, really easy to start purchasing a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that is going to be a challenge, I think, for both, well, for everyone, for the small business owners, particularly for Shopify, because obviously Shopify has a very strong presence within the small business space. But for any of these companies, that's going to be a big barrier is consumer confidence, because honestly, it's a little nerve-wracking to hand over your credit card details to an AI agent. Amazon have actually launched something similar not too long ago. And with the Amazon one, it has all your card details. It can go away and purchase something on a third-party website outside the Amazon environment if Amazon doesn't carry it, which is also slightly terrifying. So, and this is coming from those of us who are pretty comfortable using AI. So your average consumer is gonna be a little scared by this concept. That being said,
I think that this could be a real game changer though for small businesses.
100%.
This could be really level the playing field between small business and some of the larger players. It can become a really major channel, especially because, and when I say it's a game changer for small businesses, the reason behind that is if you're a massive company with a huge catalog and you haven't maybe been really good or specific around the product descriptions, what's in there. If you're a small business, the small business product category or catalog tends to be a little bit more curated. You've spent a little bit more time on the descriptions. All of that information is going to be gold for an AI chatbot to be able to give proper recommendations versus I've got thousands upon thousands of products. If I'm a consumer and I'm searching for that one specific thing, it's kind of like needle in the haystack. And that's going to be a consistent thing that we talk about, which is how an LLM or how AI can find, the needle in the haystack. This is where a small business site with super curated products can allow a customer to find something that's really specific to their use case and their need. So it can be a really big game changer if you take this you look at it as such, and you realize that you need to be really curated and tailored and really have great product descriptions. So if you're looking at your catalog and you're thinking to yourself, how are people going to find my product? That's how they're going to do it. And so you need to kind of probably go through and look at your catalog as such.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good thing to flag. Like, everyone's pretty familiar with SEO, search engine optimization, like especially if you run a small business, an e-com business, you will be very familiar with that term, but you kind of now need to turn it on its head. And I think you still will need to optimize for search engines as you have been for the last 20 years. But now you're going to have to start optimizing for AI enabled search or these shopping enabled searches. And that's it's not going to be massively different, I don't think, but it's just another thing that you're gonna have to bear in mind, because that's just how people are going to be using ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of the other AI enabled searches to find products. And so it's just something that's you're going to need to bear in mind. I think we probably could do an entire segment just on AI enabled searches. So that's probably something that we will keep in mind for the future. But for now, it's just important to know that both OpenAI and Perplexity have enabled these AI powered shopping functions. As a consumer, I'm thrilled because I'm shopping for furniture at the minute and I have a really specific thing in mind that I want to find and I cannot for the life of me find it. And it's driving me insane. So I can't wait to start using this ChatGPT feature because I can spend hours scrolling away on furniture websites.
Yeah. So, some key takeaways on this one: audit your product descriptions and metadata, right? Really focus on strong reviews. So, businesses with strong reviews and clear product information are going to win in this environment. And then I think if you're on Shopify or if you're using PayPal in some way, stay alert for announcements about, AI
Yeah.
integration features so that, pun intended, you can be an early adopter.
Love it. And actually, something else that we should flag is one of the reasons why this is going to be great, both as a consumer and as a business, is that this is going to enable seamless transactions. Think how many times, as the shopper yourself or as a business, you've had someone stuck in a cart for whatever reason. They don't have access to their card, so they have to go away and find it, which I know is something that happens to me all the time. Whatever it is. And so they get stuck and then they abandon the cart because because that process is too difficult. This should take a lot of that friction away, which means that it's gonna be much easier to continue that purchase, which, as Kyle flagged earlier, is potentially an issue if you have problems with impulse shopping. But if you think about Amazon's, one-click purchase, that makes your life so much easier. You can buy something in 30 seconds, which is, has its pros and cons, but it's a lot easier. And so from an actual shopping perspective, that's going to be a really key thing as well, is that this is going to enable that kind of seamless experience, which is super important. Tool reviews. Let's talk tools, because this is everyone's favorite, least favorite thing to do.
All right. So I think this week, we talked a lot about what we want to cover. And, in episodes in the future, we're going to cover, how do you get the most out of ChatGPT? Which AI should I be using? We'll get into all of that. But I think this week we wanted to cover image generation. It's something that has been around for a while, but is really making a lot of strides. Jess and I in particular, we've done a lot around logo designs.
Oh my God, so many logo designs. What you see now is the best of probably 50 efforts. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a designer.
Yes. Logo designs, LinkedIn backgrounds. My current LinkedIn background was designed by Midjourney, and I'll get into a little bit about that. Slide designs. I mean, we've probably used all the tools. But I think the bit today is we're going to focus on some of the leading platforms. Again, as we'll say time and time again, there are so many out there. But the ones that I typically hear about are Midjourney, and I'll talk about that more because that's my personal favorite. There's Dolly, right, which is actually what you're using in ChatGPT when you say, generate an image for me, and you get the little, scroll button that it's, generating an image, and then you see something pop out. That's actually Dolly. And then there's another one, Stability AI. This one's a little bit different or more unique, and I'll kind of get into those differences in a bit. But we'll talk about how to match those with your specific needs and maybe your technical levels. So I really like Midjourney. I think it excels at creating highly artistic, very stylized images with a lot of detail, and it has this kind of seed concept, which is super important. If you like an image or if you like something about a specific image, you can then take that seed or the kind of origin of that image, and then you can start to edit and create variations around it. And that can be really useful rather than trying to generate a new image every time, which is typically what Dolly is going to do with ChatGPT. It's going to
it's going to not be the same every time. It's going to be, you're going to lose that core thing that you want.
100%. So you'll get really frustrated, or at least I personally have gotten frustrated. You've got you generate an image that is just super close, and then you go, okay, just change this one thing. In Dolly, it's going to generate a whole new image, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, how does this have any relevance to what I just did? Like, just give me that little difference. Well, with Midjourney and with Stability AI, you can, just do a slight variation on the image that you liked. So that's really useful and can save you some frustration for sure. Dolly, which I talked about, it's probably the most accessible option. If you have ChatGPT Pro, $20 a month, you can use this quite a bit. And it's really good. And I would say it's great for brainstorming. It's part of your, workflow. you're in there typing a bunch of copy for LinkedIn. You need an image, generate an image that, fits with everything you're talking about. It's a great brainstorming tool. Continue to use that. But again, it's going to have that limitation when you want to start, changing it a little bit or making it more of this. I think the really popular use case I see, which is, like more this, more that, and you see people getting like this.
That's my favorite. It makes me laugh every time.
Those are pretty good, but probably not what you're trying to do when you're getting, trying to generate your logo or
No.
image for your creative campaign or whatever.
It would be pretty funny though.
It's a great viral thing to talk about, right?
Absolutely.
Then the last one I have is the Stability AI. Now this one is a little unique. So Stability AI has their stable diffusion. You actually either download this to your local computer and run locally, or you can run on like a virtual machine, like in Google Cloud or something like that. I'll say that's probably beyond what most people want to do. It probably gets into a little bit too technical. They do have their stable assistant, which is like a graphical user interface or a GUI that you can, log in and use just like you would Mid or ChatGPT. My personal issue, I had some account issues with it and I couldn't get into it after I was paying for it. So that's my own frustration.
That's not good.
It's a grain of salt. But anyway, so with Midjourney, like I said, I've used that to generate my, my LinkedIn, background image. I think it's, quite user friendly. But we should talk about kind of how you get the best out of that, right?
So my question about Midjourney, because I've played around with it a little bit in the past, is I find the barrier to use Midjourney very high. And for those of you who don't know, to use Midjourney, you have to go through Discord, which is a I don't know, how do you describe Discord? It's a kind of community-based, chat-based platform. And it's a lot of hoops to jump through. And honestly, it's the reason why I don't tend to use Midjourney, because it's a lot of hoops to jump through. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so now you can log into Midjourney directly, and
can you? Thank God for that. So I'm dating myself here. So
it's okay. A lot of these tools initially, when they first get going, the barriers to entry, kind of can become a little daunting. But now you can log in just like you would ChatGPT and use the interface. But the power, again, the reason that I really like Midjourney is this seed concept. So
that's very helpful.
It's super helpful. It really helps improve your results. And, I kind of talked about it a little bit. When you generate an image you can kind of click on that and you'll see options appear where you can, vary it subtly or vary it strongly. You can change your prompt a little bit, but it'll still take that seed and improve it. So I think there's some quick tips I'd like to kind of help people with to get the most out of those results, some things that I've
Go
used.
for it.
Yeah. So when you're prompting in Midjourney, now we'll get into this with every tool, but prompting is going to be key. That's going to be a consistent theme we talk about. And that's true just as true for Midjourney as it is for any other tool. So instead of just saying, give me a logo for Early Adoptr or give me a logo for a coffee shop, you really want to get specific in your prompt, right? So you want to talk about the style. You want to talk about specific components. You want to be as specific as possible. So maybe it's a minimalist logo for an artisanal coffee roastery, right? And then put in some key details like featuring subtle coffee bean motifs, right? And then talk about like the style, right? So we said minimalist, but maybe you want, specific colors, earthy tones, or you want neon tones, which would be a little crazy, but hey, whatever works for you.
Let's go for it.
And then give its use. Like, okay, subtle for packaging and signage, or maybe I want it for, a LinkedIn, image or for a Facebook image. So be specific about where you're going to use it because context is key in all of this. And then you can even talk about the resolution, or you can talk about the aspect ratio. So sometimes if you want like, I mean, this is getting very in the weeds here, but if you want an aspect ratio of like 4:3 for anyone who's doing like specific designs, tell it that, right? The more specific details you provide about the style, the lighting, the perspective, all of that is going to give you much better results. And then when you're iterating on each of those images, that's where I think Midjourney really shines. So you generate your initial grid of 4 images. So you type in your prompt, you give it all the specificity you can. It's going to generate 4 images for you. Figure out which one you like the most. Select that image, and then you can start to do quite a bit with it. So you can upscale it or downscale it, right, depending on what style you want. You can create variations by, subtle and strong, and it'll give you 4 different versions of the one you liked. So you can start going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, I like this one, but I want it a little different. Let me kind of slowly make it more specific to what I want. You can zoom out if there's specific parts of it you like more than others. The point is, you can really start to go further. Now, if you hate all of them, try a different prompt, right? Start fresh. And now the thing is you can do this. I mean, you can spend 2 hours and create 1,000 iterations. I mean, you can really go wild with this. Versus, back in the day, if you were brainstorming and you wanted to create something, you would work with a graphic designer. You'd send them what you wanted. Even if you were really specific with your project, you'd get a couple versions back. Then you'd send it back to them. They turn it around in a couple days, and backwards and forwards. This now really can optimize and allow you to brainstorm and try things out and experiment way faster and way cheaper than you ever could before. That doesn't mean that it's completely removing designers. At some point,
I was going to say, we still support designers.
We still support designers, and I think there's a lot around. And the truth is, you're going to get to a point probably with this image that you've been experimenting with. It's probably not going to be perfect, right? There's going to be things that you don't quite love about it. That's a perfect way for a designer to come in, but you can give them like your 4 favorite iterations that you've gone through and say, I just don't quite like these tweaks and bits. And then the designer is going to come up with something that's perfect for you. And also, not to forget, you'll get high definition versions, you'll get SVGs and PNGs and all the things you need for all of your creative. So the designer absolutely still exists, but you can help speed up that process quite a bit.
I think as well, it's a great option if you don't have the budget for a designer, because designers can be more expensive, as they should be. They have lots of experience and knowledge, and that's why we love them. But if money is a little bit tight, this is a good option to start, and then you go to a designer to upgrade your existing logo or whatever when you've got the funds. So I think that's an important thing to flag as well. And also, Kyle, if I'm not wrong, you can upload inspiration as well, right? So you can find images that you like, which will help give it a little more guidance as well. If you're struggling with the prompt, you can say, I really like this logo. Can it be in the style of whatever? So I think that's a useful tip as well. And that's with any of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, one of the pitfalls or something to be aware of is copyright issues.
Yes, that's a very important thing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, then we could talk about this for a long time. But when you look at something like Dolly, if you type in "give me a Harry Potter in styled image of glasses," it will not do that, right?
No, I've tried with Godzilla many times.
Now, the interesting thing is you could do that. You could say a Harry Potter inspired artwork in Midjourney, and it will not break that copyright. So that is something to kind of be aware of. That being said, we definitely don't condone stealing anyone's IP.
No, absolutely not.
Definitely something to be cognizant of and aware of, that you might want to use that as inspiration, or if there's a specific style, or like Jess said, if you have an image and you want to mimic or look at that style, you can. We could, if we were doing this a couple of weeks ago, we would have talked about the the Miyazaki example where everyone was.
Oh yeah, the Studio Ghibli, yeah, with Dolly, which looked amazing, but was a massive copyright issue.
Right.
So it's just an important thing to be aware of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Jess, you have your own version of this that you want to talk about. Like I said, there's a million different tools out there, but I think you have one that's quite useful.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to go too in depth on it today because, first of all, you've inspired me to go off and try Midjourney again. Because, as I said, I got so frustrated with it that I gave up after a while. So I will go back and give it a second try. Um, but there are so many image generation tools out there. I came across one the other day called Manus.ai. So that's one that I'm going to be, I think it literally only just launched a couple days ago. So I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet. But that's one that I will look into for next week, and I will report back with my findings and let everyone know if it's worth taking a look at a little bit more. So I think that brings us coming towards the end, but also my favorite section of the podcast, which we're calling AI Gone Wrong. This is our weekly reminder that while AI is incredibly helpful, it always needs human oversight.
The great thing is this is going to be small and large. So this week's cautionary tale comes from none other than Coca-Cola. So, if you're thinking about, oh, I don't know enough about this, turns out even the big players are struggling with. So in their recent classic campaign, highlighting classic books that mention Coca-Cola, they featured a book called Extreme Metaphors by famous author J.G. Ballard. Tell us about that book.
Well, the problem is that this book doesn't actually exist. So, so the AI confused a collection of interviews published after Ballard's death with an actual novel. And this appeared in a really high profile ad campaign from what is arguably one of the most recognizable brands in the world. So, I think this is just something that we want to reiterate again and again.
Yeah.
AI is great with human insight, or oversight, I should say.
And this illustrates one of I think, the common AI gone wrong or AI pitfalls. It's something that is being spoken about a lot in conferences. And the term is really AI hallucination, which actually isn't really the technical term. At some point, we'll talk more about that. But it's the kind of hypey buzz term that's typically spoken about. And it's a typical reminder that you need to put in proper guardrails and verification of the information. It's a little bit too far past, so I don't think we'll bring it up. So I'll talk about it now. But there's the great example where a completely a legal case was completely made up and used in court. And then it turned out that wasn't precedent because it didn't exist. But the AI is trying to give you the answer that you've asked for.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't have the information out in the world, it'll make it up so it can answer this correctly for you. And this is something we'll talk about in our prompting, how to basically make sure that you get, real results, how you reduce AI hallucinations. So all of that's going to be coming, but it is something to remember that you do need to verify what you get, because the LLM, the AI, is trained to answer you, not necessarily to answer you correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a wrap for our first episode. If you found these insights and tips helpful, please remember to subscribe to Early Adoptr wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on LinkedIn at Early Adoptr, no E in the adopter. And we will also be putting all of these up on our YouTube channel, also Early Adoptr, no E. And share this with all of your friends and family who are entrepreneurs or who run small businesses or who just want to learn how to use AI better and you think that could benefit from our conversations.
Absolutely. And we really do want to hear from you. We will, of course, anonymize everything, but we want to hear your stories. We want to hear your questions, maybe some of the challenges. So if you can share that to hello@earlyadoptr.ai. There's no E in adopter, just FYI. And we'll address those in upcoming episodes. So there's a story I didn't even tell, we'll get to in the next time. What we found in talking to people and in people sharing their stories, you can be very senior at a Fortune 500 company and you're implementing, LinkedIn lead generation AI without even telling the rest of your team. I'll save that story for our next episode, but we want to hear about all that. So we'll take those use cases, we'll share them with you. Hopefully you can use them in your own world. And then we'll provide links to all the tools and resources that we mentioned. So we'll link Midjourney and we'll definitely link things and kind of tell you the cost and the breakdown so you don't have to do all that research. well. So hopefully we can help keep you from going down any research rabbit holes and speed up your
We'll
adoption.
do all that for you.
We'll try. Yeah.
We'll try. Right. So thank you for listening to Early Adopter, where we help make AI your unfair advantage. And until next time, keep innovating and stay curious, because we certainly do.
Yeah. Jess, this was fun. I'm glad we're going to keep doing this.
I'm thrilled. Can't wait.
Hopefully everyone else finds it fun. It's just not us just chatting back and forth, but we love it.
Exactly. Right, Kyle, we'll chat next week.
All right. Bye, Jess. See everyone.